Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and Prez, and this episode 466. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Prez, that is at _Presidente on Twitter. Prez, how are you doing?
I'm so excited for the All-Star Weekend festivities, said nobody ever in 2025.
Yeah, I've never really been an all-star person anyway, but it especially sucks now. So
I
I
used
don't know.
to be, but not anymore.
I guess it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Gives you a week off away from thinking about basketball, which is probably healthy for all of us if we're being honest. But as I say that, we're going to talk about basketball. But before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements. First, week that Strickland has a YouTube channel where you maybe watch this podcast. If you are not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.thestrict.land. There's a link to the merchandise store, and there's all kinds of cool stuff on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. The Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Strickland podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, a podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, aka Doug, along with Zach Blatter, and you get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strick and Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave about things even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business, and you get access to Strictly NFL, which you guessed it, is a podcast about the NFL that is hosted by Konstantin Metrikos and Desmond Novak. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and a $100 tier that's coming with a variety of additional benefits, like listening in on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-host the podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you, and none of this would be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC. BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. We're going to do an exercise. Before we do that exercise, not like a physical exercise, just a mental exercise. But before we do that, Prez, any thoughts on the Knicks, either in this recent stretch of games or first half thoughts of what they have achieved so far this season, where they stand, all kinds of those things?
Yes, I do have thoughts. Surprise. First, I want to say I just this morning actually watched the end of the Hawks game, the last starting at the 4-minute point in the fourth quarter, because when it was on live, Thibs challenged the out of bounds call, saying that Josh Hart got fouled, and they were taking mad long for the review. And that's when I knew. I was like, I'm gonna have to go to sleep soon, and I already know this review and the rest of this game is gonna be on some bullshit. So I'm just cutting it off, and I hope the Knicks win. And then, sure enough, overtime hoops. I would have been awake till like too late for an old washed up person like me. So correct decision by Prez. But yeah, I went back and watched it, and in a lot of ways, I thought the Hawks game was a pretty good encapsulation of the Knicks first half. Like aside from OG not being there, but like you saw the dominance of the Knicks two stars on offense. You saw them have a huge lead, you have it come back, and then retake the lead. We saw the Knicks issues with depth a little bit. Like Precious was fine as a starter. He probably played more than he should have, but like Deuce went out. What is it, rib contusion or something? And it was just rough going, and I think that definitely contributed to the Hawks just beasting on the offensive glass for us. The Knicks don't have really any true power forward size guys aside from Precious, and arguably OG. You saw the Knicks' strengths on defense as well as their weaknesses on defense. I I know we've talked about it the last couple of episodes, but it feels like the Knicks really only, and Cat especially, really only lock in on defense when the stars align, um, because they know they can out talent a lot of teams on offense. And like, it was crazy just watching in the Hawks game in particular, knowing they have a lot of guys who like Trey and Dyson just love getting to that floater. And they have a lot of guys who just enjoy that like short mid range area. And this guy Towns just doesn't put his hand up. Like, he just doesn't care when guarding the ball handler. He's just like, there's no attempt to disguise whether he's gonna guard the big or the ball handler. And I looked on Synergy, and he has 598 possessions as a pick and roll ball handler defender, and it makes up 70% of his time on defense, and that's in the 99th percentile. So we already know the Knicks get put in pick and roll more than any team in the league, and Towns is the reason for that. He gives up 45% from the field, which is a below average number on that. Gives up 52% on possessions against the roll man, which is below average. Synergy has him at giving up 57% at the rim. That's lower than the NBA.com number, but the point is, it's not a good number. He gives up 40% on runners, which seems fine, but the volume is crazy. He's had 98 runners attempted. And he's played a lot of minutes, so that's part of it, but that kind of struck me as just kind of a crazy number. And it's because that people know that's a shot they can get whenever. And then on like hook shots, which is kind of like a catch-all for like just some other shots at the rim that aren't layups, people are 14 for 20 on him. So I don't know. I bring that all up in spite of his awesomeness on offense, which is very welcome lately. Has won us several games, because like, that's really what I'll be looking forward to in the big matchups, which is not new to anybody. I still think it's the lowest hanging fruit for this team. And the crazy thing to me is like, watching the Hawks game, I was like, the few times he did put his hand up, it felt like he almost always got like deflections or steals. And I didn't check the numbers for the Hawks game specifically, but I checked the numbers on the season generally per 36. And of the players who get regular minutes on the Knicks, Payne gets the most, 3.6 deflections per 36. Shamet gets 3.4. OG gets 3.1. Hart gets 2.8. Deuce gets 2.6, and Cat is right there at 2.4, which is pretty good considering he doesn't fucking have his hand up all the time. So I'm like, if we could get him to just put his hand up a little bit, like, we might like I think the gains would be not insignificant, as stupid as that sounds. So like, I don't know, like, it's not an answer to all of the stuff about like when teams run him in complicated plays and he's confused, but like, I still think that even though we're 36 and 18, right? Like, which is a hair off of that, like, what is it? 40 wins and 20 losses, which is like the back of the napkin thing.
It's actually right on target for that.
Okay, good. At least one of us can do math. So, so like, they're still a real contender as it is, but like, given the lack of depth, given you don't depend on Mitch, but I think it's fine to acknowledge that he brings something you don't have, even if he's, regardless of like if he plays 5 games or 15 or 25. And then Shamet and his shooting hopefully coming back a little bit. and Towns is just having low hanging fruit uh on defense. Like there's actually some real upside there to like go into the playoffs hot. And I don't think any Nick has been playing particularly over their head on offense, right? Like there's no Nick who's randomly like 49% for three, and you're just like, what? Like Towns is like 43 or 44, but like his threes are mostly wide open and he's an incredible shooter. So like that number is actually sensible. Brunson's numbers are like pretty in line with just what we've seen for him. Same with Mikal, same with OG. So like nobody's really like I don't expect anybody to come back to earth, but there's some meat on the bones left. And then you have, I think I would say in the first half, Thibs has had a pretty solid. I would give him like a solid B in terms of his performance as a coach. Maybe that's a hot take, too generous, but like even though there's things that are super fucking annoying, like triple non-shooter lineup and too much Precious and not enough Deuce and all that stuff, I think he's done. I've been the team has exceeded my expectations in terms of like how often they can run complex sets and like off-ball actions and take advantage of cutters and stuff like that. Given that a lot of these guys haven't played together, I feel like Thibs teams historically don't do a lot of that, and maybe that's just because we haven't had the players to do a lot of that. But like, if you would have told me like we would regularly have actions with the level of complexity that we do by the All-Star break, I would have not believed you. So that I do give him points for that, and I feel like he's generally got folks to like mostly lock in, not really on defense, but some of them on defense. Like Mikal has locked in more, Payne has locked in more. So I don't know. I'd give him a B. I don't know. What would you give him?
Well, it's funny you ask. I'd probably give him like a C plus.
Damn, I don't want to be in Shwin's class.
I look, the team is really good, and I'm really just so uninterested in talking about like firing him or whatever. He's not getting fired.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I don't, yeah.
So it's what it is. The reason I give him a C plus is this. I think that you're starting to see some pretty alarming trends from him, which matter as far as like actually competing.
The details has been particularly bad.
Yeah, it's that's part of it. I think like I throw out the Hawks game. The Hawks game is weird. Deuce came in with an injury. He left at halftime. There's probably no scenario where you could draw up enough lineups or whatever that Precious wasn't going to play a ton. And in fairness, Thibs did try to play small during the fourth quarter. He played Brunson, Payne, Hart, Bridges, and Cat, and that lineup kind of like did nothing. They gave up a 9 or 10 point lead all the way down to like 3 before he brought back Precious in. So like he gave it a chance. Again, what I will say is if you're going to try a lineup that you haven't tried for ever, basically, probably don't want to do that in like the most intense portion of every basketball game. But he tried it, so cool, whatever. Then he adjusted. I'm fine with all that. But in general, I actually went back and looked at this. Every game that one of the starters has been out, at least one starter has been out, he has started Precious at 4 next to Cat at the 5. Now, again, Hawks game, going to throw that one out. The other one I'll throw out is the game against Utah at home because both Brunson and Deuce were out for that game, right? So you're limited, fine. Like I'm going to throw those 2 games out. There's no reason. There's literally not a reason, a good reason, a statistical reason, a logical reason, any reason that when one of the starters is out, or sorry, any of the non-center starters are out, that Deuce doesn't start over Precious. There's not a single argument. I don't want to hear it. But there's not one. We did this last year. We saw the same fucking thing play out. Why are we doing this again? We don't need to do this again. We already know this. At least I think we already know this. But if Thibs doesn't know this and he has to learn this fucking lesson every year, that's a problem. Because, regular season games are one thing, not a problem. I mean, it's a problem, but you can deal with that. Shit happens, fine. This is the stuff that costs you playoff games. Like, I am not going to sit here and tell you the Knicks lost the Pacers series because Tom Thibodeau started Precious Achiuwa in Game 3. I'm not going to do that. But if I was a real asshole, I could probably make that argument. I don't think it's like a crazy argument. I wouldn't make it. But I think you can make that argument. And I don't know why he started Precious in Game 3. I said that at the time. Again, not going to make a huge deal about it because they nearly won Game 3 anyway and blah, 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 whatever. The point is, what was the reason for that? The only reason for that was he sees Pascal Siakam on the other side of the floor, and immediately his brain goes into, I got to have somebody that can defend him. I need to have the right amount of size on the floor. And he gets his fucking ruler out, his measuring tape, and starts measuring everybody. Oh, this guy's the right height. He gets to start. Okay. Like, you're the better team. And this is my issue. The Knicks are basically going to be the more talented team, no matter who they play, other than like Boston and OKC and arguably Cleveland. And, maybe you want to say what? Maybe Memphis. I know we smoked them, but like, sure. If you want to, there are other teams you can debate, but for 24 in like 24 of the 29 teams that you're going to have games against, the Knicks have a talent advantage. Act like it. Like, why are you focused so much? Like, it is so reactive. He's still coaching reactively, even though he has superior talent in most games. Like, you're playing the Hospital Hawks. Okay, they traded DeAndre Hunter, right? Bogdanovich is gone. Jalen Johnson's out for the fucking year. They got Dominic Barlow, who I kind of like, by the way. He's come up from the G League getting serious minutes. They had something called Mohamed Gay play before, who was like, he put up 2 of the worst shots I've ever seen in my life from an NBA player. This is the line. Like, these are like real players that were playing. Vit Krejci was out, and he's like been a starter for them. He didn't play, and yet you played this game with Precious. Like, I don't think the logic of Precious started because Deuce was hurt. That's clearly not why he did it. But you're playing these games. Like, you played the Pacers. Precious was net. He was -3 or something, I think, in that game. But he started. You know why? Because, oh my God, how are we going to defend Pascal Siakam without Precious Achiuwa on the floor? And it's like, how about you worry about, why can't you ever think, okay, how can I force them to adjust to us? Because your best players are Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. This is an offensively tilted team. Side rant. I'm so sick and tired of people saying this team has no identity. Shut the fuck up. They have an identity. You just don't like the identity. You don't like the identity. The identity is
what is that? What is that? Like, obviously, I think every team knows what's coming when we play the Knicks. So do fans of every other franchise.
Yeah. The identity is this team gets buckets. All right. That's the identity. Going back to this. So what lineups, what players, who do you put around these guys, right, that best complement them? Obviously, OG Anunoby would normally start, and we'd all be okay with that. I think for the most part, we're all okay with the starting lineup, right? But when you have to adjust, his adjustment has, in this scenario, in terms of a starter being out, has been to put Precious in the lineup, and he's just not like a good fit there. And look, I understand if you start Deuce, well, it's a smaller lineup, and sure, okay, yeah, I get that. Here are the reasons why you should start Deuce McBride. One, every fucking lineup with him that involves any of these starters fucking kills. Go back to last season, same fucking deal. All right. So, like, it's not like you're sitting here like, oh man, like, I hope this lineup can hold its water. Like,
it's a known quantity. Yeah. This isn't some experimental thing.
But it's not even like they're just like +3, +2. It's like they're like +15, plus 12, plus 13. Like, these are lineups that are very fucking effective. So, that's one. The second reason, if you want to get into like, well, there are certain things Precious brings. One, that's fine. I don't want to get into things that Precious does or doesn't do or whatever. I think we can all accept that there are certain things Precious is capable of that obviously Deuce McBride is not capable of. Not a controversial thing. Here's the things that I like about Deuce McBride that he does. One, he's a better screener for Jalen Brunson than Precious Achiuwa. Not even a fucking, like, they're fucking leagues apart as screeners for Jalen Brunson, who is, again, your most important player. Okay, so that's one. Two, teams have to actually defend him when he's spotting up somewhere behind the three-point line, in the corner, above the break, wherever. Like, that's massively valuable. I cannot express, again, I've said this on like 2 different pods since the game. I cannot express how insane what Jalen Brunson did at the end of the fourth quarter and into overtime was with that spacing, heavy air quotes on spacing. It is crazy what he did in that game. And that is not sustainable. You can get away with that against the Hawks because it's the fucking Hawks. And you might even be able to get away with that against good teams in certain situations when Brunson has it going and Cat has it going. But that's not going to be every single night. So you have to make life easier for them. How does Precious Achiuwa help either of them? What does he do? What does he do for Jalen Brunson? Does he do anything for Jalen Brunson on the offensive end of the floor? No. Does he do anything for Karl-Anthony Towns on the offensive end of the floor? No. Is he do the lineups with him in that starting lineup next to Karl-Anthony Towns, are they particularly good on defense? No, they're bad on defense. They're actively bad on defense. They're not even good at rebounding in some matchups, as we saw against the Hawks. So you're like, this whole thing of like size, and it doesn't matter if the lineup isn't good. You're not trying to win the rebound battle or the fucking turnover battle or what. You're trying to win the fucking game. You're trying to win the net rating battle is what you're trying to do. Put the lineups on the floor that are better at outscoring your opponent. I don't care how the fuck they get there. I don't care how they do it. If they do it by taking 0 threes, cool, great. I don't care. As long as they can do it, I'm fine with that. If they take 6 billion threes, cool, great. If they play fast, if they play slow, if they cause a lot of turnovers, if they don't cause turnovers, but they're just really, really good at contesting shots and getting stops, like, I don't care how you do it, but put lineups on the floor that are the best at winning their minutes. Like, I don't know how else to say it other than that. Precious Achiuwa in that starting lineup does not get it done. His best minutes consistently since he's been in New York have been when he plays the 5. I do not give a fuck if he's 6'8" and not really built like a center. His best minutes always come at the 5 every fucking time. The best game he had this season was the game against the Kings. He played the 5 strictly, basically, in that game. He was great in that game. He fucking locked up Sabonis. We talked about it after that game. We were like, wow, like, look, Karl-Anthony Towns obviously been great, but he had a terrible game, I thought. Precious was great. He was really, really great that game. So when you have this fucking preponderance of evidence staring at you and you consistently make a dumb decision, that is concerning to me. That's very, very concerning to me. Not in terms of, is Thibs a good coach or is this team good? No, I don't even think those need to be. There's no argument to be had about those. Both those things are unequivocally true. But we are not in the fucking world of we just want to be good now. Like, we know we're good. That's established. We've established that. Now we're at the portion of the team build where it is about, does this thing, does this player, does this tactic, does this approach, does it help us win a championship? Does it bring us closer to winning a championship? Does it increase the chances of us winning a championship? And nothing about Precious, starting at the 4, is helps you to that end. And it's not because, I'm not saying that when the Knicks win the championship, Deuce McBride is going to be starting. That's not my point. But those lineups are clearly better than the lineup that is worse. And so if I'm thinking, if you're in a playoff situation, you have to be able to get over the fact that it's a small lineup and just play it because it's better if you're put in a situation like that. And he is not showing me that he's capable of doing that. And then the other reason I'd give him a C+ is, you talked about Karl-Anthony Towns being dog shit on defense. I agree with that. I don't think I know I would hope that there's nobody that really argues that point. What I would say is if you know the player is bad at the thing that you're asking him to do every fucking time, which is drop coverage, maybe you need to have more arrows in your quiver. And
Also, as a quick aside, like he's bad in drop. Part of the reason he's bad in drop is he doesn't put his hands up, and like
he's got big
but
clown feet. He can't jump when he's
he's
backpedaling.
he's a very bad 2 foot jumper any direction, and especially backpedaling. But like going back to my thing that I was harping on just him like contesting, like I'm sorry, like if like that, like yes, you can and should fault Towns for that. That should be within the power of the coach to be like, you have to fucking do this. It's not negotiable. This is not asking Towns to become a higher backpedaling jumper or like some hyper aware off ball defender. Like this is something that you're not asking him to change his identity or become a different player, right? This isn't asking Jalen Brunson to become a lockup wing. Like this is like, no, you can just, hey, like if you're gonna be our center, like you have to do this. Like this is what it is. Like they spent 9,000 press quotes talking about how we're over our beef from the past and Towns is a man now and he was a child before and our relationship is fine. Okay, tell him to put a fucking hand up, dude. Like it's it's a lesser version of all the other stuff you just articulated where you see something that works right in front of you very obviously, and for whatever reason Thibs is just like, I don't care.